This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Behind closed doors, good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Former President Bill Clinton is being deposed this hour by the House Oversight Committee at his house in Chappaqua, New York. Investigators are looking into alleged ties with the late child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Criminal defense attorney Ken Belkin.
We know he flew on his plane many times. We know that Jeffrey Epstein visited him in the White House while he was president many times. I think this begs questions about what he might have observed on those flights, what his conversations with Mr. Epstein entailed. And I think the American people deserve answers to those questions.
Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House no fewer than 16 times while Bill Clinton was in office, and Clinton flew on his private plane more than 24 times after he left the Oval Office. Clinton's wife, Hillary, was questioned yesterday for more than 6 hours.
I never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any connection or communication with him. It was disappointing that they refused to hold a public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you. You could have seen it for yourself.
Hillary Clinton says she knew Epstein's imprisoned girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, as an acquaintance only. The videotaped depositions of Bill and Hillary Clinton will be released at a later date. Another round of peace talks scheduled for next week as the U.S. and Iran prepare for the very real possibility of war. Victoria Coates with the Heritage Foundation.
We prefer a diplomatic result to this. The offer is on the table for the Iranians if they choose to take it and prevent any military escalation from happening.
Negotiations wrapped up yesterday in Geneva, Switzerland, with Iran refusing to shut down its uranium enrichment program. The White House says the world's #1 sponsor of terrorism must never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. Pakistan has just carried out airstrikes against the two largest cities in neighboring Afghanistan. It happened just hours after Afghan troops attacked Pakistani border positions. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
This has been a long simmering conflict, but the chaos threatens to further destabilize a region where terrorist groups such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda are trying to remobilize.
Pakistan says today's military action killed over 130 Taliban fighters. Afghanistan claims to have killed dozens of Pakistani soldiers. Pakistan's defense minister's calling it an open war against the Taliban. A U.S. citizen was among the 4 people killed by the Cuban Coast Guard during a recent deadly shooting at sea. It happened about a mile off the coast of northern Cuba on Wednesday. Fox's Stephanie Bennett.
Cuba's Interior Ministry claims the 10 individuals on board the 24-foot stolen Florida speedboat intended to carry out an infiltration for terrorist purposes and were armed with assault rifles, handguns, Molotov cocktails, and had camouflage uniforms. A brother of one of the victims told the Associated Press he had an obsessive and diabolical quest to end Cuba's communist government.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the Florida Attorney General are all investigating the incident. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani met with President Trump at the White House yesterday. He's requesting over $20 billion from the federal government to help the Big Apple build 12,000 new affordable homes. It would mark the largest housing project in New York City since the early 1970s. Good news on the housing front. Mortgage rates are falling, finally. A 30-year fixed rate is below 6% now for the first time in 3 years. What does that mean for the average homeowner?
You're almost getting 1 month free for every 12 months that you're paying your mortgage, and that's something you're going to save every year. That gives you an extra roughly $34,000 in purchasing power.
How about that? Daniel Hale, chief economist for Realtor.com. TSA workers are feeling the effects of the partial government shutdown. Their pay's been slashed as the fight over funding the Department of Homeland Security continues. Chris Van Cleve covers aviation for CBS News.
The nation's airlines also worry if the shutdown, already in its second week, drags on, TSA sick calls will rise, resulting in long wait times at TSA checkpoints. We've seen that during shutdowns before.
Democrats are refusing to reopen the government until reforms are made to immigration enforcement efforts. The impasse also affects FEMA, the Coast Guard, and the Secret Service. The FAA closed airspace again yesterday for the second time this month along the border in West Texas. NBC's Ryan Chandler is there.
A shutdown in the Texas skies after the U.S. military reportedly shot down a drone from another branch of the U.S. government. The Defense Department used a high-energy laser to target the drone, which belonged to the Department of Homeland Security.
The FAA closed the airspace around the Fort Hancock area. That's a small Texas town on the Mexico border. Comes just weeks after another drone incident, which closed a larger airspace, delaying commercial flights in and around El Paso. An infamous stowaway has been busted again, this time for sneaking aboard an airplane bound for Italy. It happened on Wednesday at Newark Liberty International Airport.
Svetlana Dali gained notoriety for boarding a Delta flight from JFK to Paris without a ticket in November of 2024. Dali, who is in her late 50s, was found guilty last year and sentenced to time served. Authorities say she's now in custody in Milan after allegedly slipping by the ticket agent at Newark Wednesday and boarding a United flight to Milan. She wasn't noticed until the flight was well underway. Dali is on supervised release and is accused of trying to sneak onto several other planes as well. I'm Mark Mayfield.
All right, Mark, thank you for that. Still to come on the Noon Report for Friday. Ice in the news in New York and PA. Ice dams are causing property damage and icy reaction to electric school buses.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. The weekend is upon us, and the weather conditions expected this weekend look to be decidedly mixed. I'll spell that out on the forecast coming up. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right, see you then. Thank you, Kevin. Let's check the stories making news where you live. All across New York and Pennsylvania, new SNAP work requirements kick in this weekend. Starting Sunday, new rules take effect for those on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Effective March 1st, all able-bodied adults without dependents must work at least 20 hours a week in order to continue receiving food aid. There are a few exceptions, however. You should check with your county office of social services to learn more. ICE detention facilities could soon be coming to Pennsylvania. The federal government wants to convert warehouses in Berks and Schuylkill counties into holding centers for illegal immigrants. Governor Josh Shapiro is not a fan of that.
While the federal government has enormous power to place these across the country, I want you to know we are not powerless here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I intend to use every tool at my disposal to stop these facilities from coming here.
The governor says the local infrastructure cannot sustain the immigration enforcement operations, but Central Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry says the Commonwealth should be doing all it can to support federal efforts to improve public safety.
The law says that if you're here illegally committing crimes, you must be arrested and go through the process and deported if necessary. That's the president's job. If they don't like that, I get it, then change the laws.
The governor says Tremont Township in Schuylkill County would run out of water in less than a day if ICE were to set up shop there. Homeland Security has already spent tens of millions of dollars purchasing property in Schuylkill and Berks counties. New York Democrats are promoting legislation that would prevent local law enforcement from cooperating with ICE. Family Life's Sarah Harnish.
The Dignity Not Detention Act would prohibit county jails in New York State from housing detainees under intergovernmental service agreements. Another bill is called New York for All and would ban collaborative contracts. Meanwhile, Governor Hochul has proposed her Local Cops, Local Crimes Act, which would limit local police from assisting ICE. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Thank you, Sarah. New York Attorney General Tish James is investigating the death of a 56 36-year-old refugee who was dropped off by ICE agents at a Tim Hortons coffee shop in downtown Buffalo. The man from Myanmar was legally blind and did not speak English. He was found dead on a Buffalo City street Tuesday night, just days after being released from custody. Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan wants answers now. He says the migrant had family in the area and that family should have been notified, but they were not.
There would have been ways to contact the family so you didn't leave somebody out in the cold.
The immigrant was arrested last year for trespassing and assaulting police. He was bailed out by his family last Thursday and transferred to the custody of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. A funeral service for that man was held yesterday in Buffalo. A Vestal, New York man has died from his injuries after an officer-involved shooting on Wednesday. The 38-year-old ignored orders to drop a knife when police responded to a mental health call at his home around noontime Wednesday. Damage from ice dams is causing headaches for homeowners. As the snow melts from rooftops, it can cause water to leak into walls and ceilings. That's what happened to Lisa Poente's home in Webster, New York. She tells 13 Wham.
A lot of people don't expect the type of damage that it can cause, so it's really stressful and it's been pretty crazy. Definitely looking forward to summer.
Aren't we all? Zach Brown with Servpro says ice dams are a common problem this time of year.
Right now we have over 100 ice damming calls, either currently ongoing or we're planning on getting to. It's been nonstop this year with the weather, so it's been crazy.
Brown recommends you clear excessive snow off your roof and make sure your home has proper insulation as well as ventilation. With 8 months to go before the November midterms, a new Marist poll shows New York Governor Kathy Hochul with a double-digit lead over her Republican rival, Bruce Blakeman. The Democratic incumbent's out in front of the Nassau County executive by a margin of 50 to 33%. This despite most voters admitting they cannot afford the high cost of living in New York anymore. A third of those surveyed said they want to move to someplace else. Hochul's job approval rating stands at 46%. New York's rush to electrify school buses is not sitting well with some. A new state law requires buses be all electric in less than 10 years. New York's put aside $100 million to help districts make the transition. Thomas Finnerty is assistant superintendent of the Cazenovia Central School.
$100 million sounds like a lot, but there's 731 public school districts in New York. So if you do the math, there's about $136,000 available per district if it were distributed evenly. $136,000 is enough for a quarter of a bus.
The North Syracuse Central School District has applied for a waiver which would exempt it from the electric bus mandate. District spokesman Don Keegan tells Spectrum News.
Right now, the cost of an electric bus is approaching $500,000, and it's a big pill to swallow. Right now, we could only electrify about 40% of our fleet.
There's legislation in the state assembly that would pump the brakes on the electric bus mandate, which is set to take effect in the year 2035. More than 100,000 Pennsylvanians have dropped their health insurance coverage on the state insurance marketplace known as Penny. The executive director of Penny says 20,000 ended that coverage in the month of February alone. She blames Congress for not extending Obamacare subsidies. The healthcare executive told lawmakers in Harrisburg this week that people do not stop getting sick just because they do not have health insurance. A Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania contractor has just admitted to running 2 separate fraud schemes. We get those details new at noon from Family Life's Brian Query.
34-year-old Justin Heimbach of Bath, Pennsylvania, pleaded guilty Thursday to 6 counts of mail fraud and 4 counts of fire fraud in federal court. Prosecutors say Heimbach defrauded the government by submitting false applications through the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, using inaccurate information about workers' employment status. In a separate scheme, authorities say he purchased vehicles from several Lehigh Valley dealerships using checks drawn on closed or insufficient bank accounts, often in the names of construction companies tied to him. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, Brian, thank you for that. The Lebanon School District in South Central Central Pennsylvania is facing a lawsuit from the family of a student who committed suicide. That lawsuit claims school officials failed to protect the 12-year-old from being bullied. Relatives say that bullying is what led to the child's death in June of 2024. They argue the school was legally obligated to intervene as the bullying was, quote, discriminatory in nature. The district denies those allegations. Still no word on what caused that massive fire yesterday that destroyed a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant across the street from the Arnott Mall in Horseheads, New York. The local fire chief tells 18 News controlling that blaze was difficult to do.
The building construction is the hardest part right now. I mean, the fire spread throughout the rest of the building just the way it's got up into the roof part of the building and just spread right across. So a lot of these buildings and storefronts are made out of styrofoam, as you can see on the front of it. So that definitely excelled the fire rose quite a bit.
Firefighters from 8 different departments responded to that blaze, which also destroyed a Baskin-Robbins and a cannabis shop on Chambers Road in Horseheads. Still to come on the Noon Report, the Trump effect in 2026, the downside of assisted suicide, and why transing kids is losing steam.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Over a century ago, long before people believed that sharks were swimming in the subways of New York during Hurricane Sandy, or before Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois joined the immigration debate on the Senate floor using an AI-altered photo that included an ICE agent without a head, young Frances Griffiths and her cousin took pictures of fairies dancing in the forest. It began as the imagination of little girls, but it turned into an international sensation known as the Cottingley Fairies Incident of 1920. Dr. Merrick Burrow, the curator of an exhibit that commemorated the strange incident, told the BBC article, and I quote, "I do not think anybody really believed it, but they couldn't explain how it had been done either." And the fairy pictures look so real, in fact, they even convinced none other than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the famously logical Sherlock Holmes stories. Initially skeptical, Conan Doyle became a believer, worked to promote the images as evidence of the supernatural. It wasn't until decades later that one of the girls confessed that they had used paper cutouts from a 1915 children's book. "I never thought of it being a fraud," Frances Griffiths told the BBC in 1983. "It was just Elsie and I having a bit of fun." Even so, the bit of fun was enough to convince some really smart people that these girls had discovered a window between our world and the world of spirits and fairies. Now, how do otherwise intelligent people fall for these things? Conan Doyle certainly wasn't a fool, but he also wasn't a disinterested party either. He was someone very curious about spiritualism. Perhaps most importantly, he'd lost a son during the First World War. The prank gave him hope that perhaps there was something beyond this world, and if so, it could mean he might see his boy again. This also helps explain the emergence of new spiritualism, something that seems to happen every few years or so, despite the predictions that more science and more technology will certainly make us less spiritual. Even as formal religious life has receded in popularity over the past few decades, people remain curious about things they wish to be true and end up being drawn to a hodgepodge of spiritual practices. And even if they don't really make sense, they can't really be proven wrong. As it turns out, people are simply spiritually vulnerable creatures. Now, it's easy to roll our eyes and cast aspersion whenever postmodern skeptics buy crystals and incense, or sharp thinkers like Conan Doyle are punked. Sometimes it is simply about indulging in fantasy or wishful thinking, but more often than not, it's about looking for a window to another world. After all, humans are made with eternity in our hearts, what Romans describes as things that are eternal but we inherently know about. Even after the fall, there's a sense that there's more to this world that we can see. For Conan Doyle, there was the longing to be reunited with his child, a sense that something is terribly wrong with death. And of course, that sense is illegitimate. Death's nothing more than a mere inconvenience if this world is all there is. It's not really wrong that someone we love dies if there's nothing eternal about us or the world or them. It's just kind of bad luck. Our longing points to something beyond ourselves that we know to be true. As C.S. Lewis put it in Mere Christianity, if we find in ourselves a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we're made for another world. Our spiritually minded and tempted neighbors are a lot like the Athenians that Luke described in Acts 17. They have all kinds of altars, even one to an unknown God, yet they somehow know that there's more. They don't know where to look. So like St. Paul, we have the opportunity, and yes, the calling, to show them what is true. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you very much, John. Let's head outside next. Weekend weather with Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast for this afternoon. Partly to mostly sunny. High temps 40s. Tonight starts with starlight and moonlight, then turns cloudy. Low temps mid-20s to low 30s. For tomorrow, we'll have a fair amount of cloud cover, except in central and eastern Pennsylvania, partly sunny there. From the cloud cover across New York State could come a rain or snow shower. High temps tomorrow, mostly 40s, and much colder Sunday. Cloudy with light snow or flurries and a high temperature, mostly in the 20s.
All right, we'll enjoy it while it lasts. Thank you, Kevin. It's Friday, folks, the 27th of February, and this is the Noon Report on Family Life. This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are this week Stephen Hayford with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Stephen filling in for our dear friend Jason McGuire, who's currently undergoing cancer treatment in Mexico. Our thoughts and prayers are with him, Loren, and their 3 children at this time. Steve, thanks for being here today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bob. Happy to be here.
Hey, let's begin, though, with Michael in Harrisburg. The one name not on the ballot this midterm election year is the one name who will influence the elections the most, and that is the president, Donald Trump. I wonder, are Republicans in Pennsylvania right to be worried that he might be a drag in statewide and some of those down ballot contests?
Well, he's sometimes a boost, sometimes a drag. It really depends on which region of Pennsylvania you're talking about. If you're looking at the suburbs in the Philadelphia area and to some degree the Pittsburgh area as well, you're going to see him more as a drag. But there are parts of Pennsylvania that when President Trump campaigns, whether he's running for president or in this case in the midterms where he's planning to campaign for congressional candidates and others, he can be a boost in some of those areas. But I think it will be a regional sort of thing here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and then there's the question, do the MAGA Republicans even show up at the ballot box November 3rd since he's not on the ballot? It's an interesting discussion there. Stephen, Governor Hochul has made President Trump the centerpiece of her reelection effort. Listening to her speak, you'd think she's running against Donald Trump and not Bruce Blakeman. How concerned are Republicans in New York State about the Trump effect in this year's midterms?
Well, Bob, I think there is cause for some concern. A Siena poll from earlier this month shows 63% unfavorable rating for President Trump. On the other hand, President Trump has a 77% favorability rating from Republican New Yorkers. So what I think that means is Bruce Blakeman and other congressional candidates, they're going to need to perform well with Trump supporters and be able to appeal to independents and moderate Democrats. And it's a challenging situation to navigate.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about assisted suicide. Michael, public support for this has grown from less than 40% in 1950 to over 65% today. That's according to Gallup. Oregon, of course, was the first state to go down this road in the 1990s. Today, there are 13 states, including New York, that permit this practice. Like with the abortion issue, what can pro-lifers do to make physician-assisted suicide not just illegal, but unthinkable?
Well, we have to, number one, I think, educate the public about the excesses that are coming with it. When we look at jurisdictions like Canada that have legalized it, we see initial strict guidelines, but they quickly expand from terminal patients to then people with mental illness or depression or even young people ending up coerced into suicide. Then we have to talk about the mercy, the care that can come, the compassion that can come for people with palliative and hospice care. And then lastly, I think as Christians, we need to talk about about the fact that life is a sacred gift, that we're made in his image, God alone numbers our days, and that we're called to choose life.
Amen. I know, Stephen, you and so many others in New York were just so dumbfounded when the governor signed this into law. A lot of folks were hoping she wouldn't, but she did. And now in 6 months, medical aid in dying, it becomes a law in New York. So many residents are unsure what to make of this law, what's true, what's not true. There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation out there. Where can folks go for reliable and accurate information when it comes to this physician-assisted suicide law and what it will mean for the state of New York?
Well, Bob, I would invite listeners to visit the website of our policy arm, New York Families Action, which is at nyfamilyaction.org. As you mentioned, Jason and myself and wonderful allies across New York spent 10 years fighting against this legislation, but unfortunately the fight didn't end the way that we had hoped. Governor Hochul signed the assisted suicide law on February 6th. The bill becomes effective in early August, and what it does is it allows people who have been diagnosed with terminal illnesses and who have been told that they have less than 6 months to live to ask for prescriptions for lethal drugs that they can self-administer to take their own lives. What this means, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything Michael just said, is that the state is inviting doctors and pharmacists to become suicide facilitators, leading people to potentially choose assisted suicide based on inaccurate diagnoses or prognoses, which can happen. And as Michael mentioned, it opens the door to future expansions of state-sanctioned suicide, which we know is something that the advocates on the other side of this issue are going to want. So again, just want to mention our website once more, nyfamilyaction.org, specifically the articles and advocacy sections.
All right. Thank you for that, Stephen. I know that's going to be helpful to a lot of people who want to know more about what this law is and what it isn't, because there is a lot of misinformation out there, unfortunately. Mike, I want to talk about social media. It's such a part of our lives now. Much of the country has been watching this landmark jury trial in Los Angeles. Could lead to fundamental changes in how social media companies do their business. What are lawmakers doing in Harrisburg to protect children from harmful online content?
Well, there's a number of actions that are being considered here in the Capitol. Among the things that they're looking at is expanding the criminalization of deep fakes and AI-generated child sexual abuse materials. They're looking at, and we back this, advancing cell phone restrictions, basically bans the use of cell phones in the classroom from bell to bell. Then we're proposing and working on a task force on child protection in the digital age. There's so many ways that young people are being impacted by this, and we're glad that the lawmakers in the Capitol are taking a look at these issues.
Great. Well, Stephen, many are comparing the negative influences of social media to the impact that cigarette smoking had on the culture a generation ago. Is big tech as guilty as big tobacco when it comes to knowingly peddling a dangerous product to kids?
Well, Bob, I think it's hard to compare tobacco to social media, but what does seem clear is that social media can cause harm to kids. And so in that sense, there's a similarity. Some statistics show that 5 to 15% of social media users develop problematic use, and that there can be a psychological dependency. According to a Surgeon General advisory, adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media double the risk of poor mental health outcomes, including depression and anxiety.
Well, gender dysphoria, guys, is an issue we discuss a lot on this program. But, Michael, we witnessed 2 horrific mass shootings this month committed by men who thought they were women. Why can't we as a culture identify gender dysphoria as what it is, a mental illness?
Well, I think the dam has kind of burst on that, and I'm hopeful for the future as we look at this issue, because we were sort of in a national trance when medical establishments and the media and others were ideologically captured by the LGBT community to say that this was the way to help kids. I think we've turned the corner on that, and I think the next step is going to say, you know what, this is a mental illness. We're seeing it play out in these mass shootings, but also in just the lives of detransitioners who realized I needed mental help, not some kind of medical intervention.
Stephen, there was a landmark court case recently out of Westchester County, New York, of all places, a jury awarding $2 million to a 22-year-old woman who had undergone a double mastectomy when she was just 16. The jury in this case said that her psychologist and her doctor committed medical malpractice. What sort of message does this decision out of Westchester County send?
Well, the message it sends, Bob, is physicians and mental health professionals who participate in transitioning, quote unquote, of young people are placing themselves at financial risk. And it's hoped that that message will cause them to reconsider their involvement in this very destructive practice. Of course, what we would want for these professionals and for kids with gender dysphoria and their families is for them to come to know Jesus Christ and have a change of heart concerning their involvement in this practice. But failing that, hopefully getting hit in the pocketbook will cause them to reconsider.
That'll have to be the last word this week. But Stephen Hayford, filling in for Jason, did a great job. If folks want to learn more about New York families and some of the topics discussed on today's program, where can they find you online?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in Pennsylvania as well. Michael, you have a wonderful website. Where can folks learn more about the Pennsylvania Family Institute?
PAFamily.org.
I lost my voice for a second there. Hey, it happens. Capital Connection comes your way every Friday during the Noon Report or online anytime. Just go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. As we head into the weekend, we do so with prospects for some mixed weather. We have a fairly pleasant, mild day today, relatively speaking. A front will deliver some cloud cover later tonight and tomorrow, maybe a sprinkle or flurry, but moderate temperatures. Behind the front, though, it turns much colder tomorrow night and Sunday, and there's going to be some snow. For this afternoon, though, partly to mostly sunny. High temps 40s. Tonight starts with starlight and moonlight, then turns cloudy, low temps mid-20s to low 30s. For tomorrow, we'll have a fair amount of cloud cover, except in central and eastern Pennsylvania, partly sunny there. From the cloud cover across New York State could come a rain or snow shower. High temps tomorrow, mostly 40s, then much colder Sunday. Cloudy with light snow or flurries and a high temperature, mostly in the 20s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Finally at noon, people, get ready. It's almost time to spring forward. Hard to believe, daylight saving time arrives next Sunday, March the 8th.
That's when 48 U.S. states will spring ahead 1 hour at 2 a.m. Doing this will give us an extra hour of daylight in the evening, but to get there, we'll lose an hour's sleep. But according to a Gallup News poll, 56% of Americans say it's worth it. There are now 30 states considering lock-the-clock legislation to keep daylight saving time permanent, but Congress has to approve it, and so far they have not. I'm Bree Tennis.
Okay, thank you very much, Bree. And just like that, we're out of time. That's our world, the world we live in. Friday, February 27th. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.